So some of you, if you've been paying attention to me, pay attention to me. Stop ignoring me. Is I have been making constructions, not only of little trucks and stuff, but constructions of faces that are for a project called Faces of the Pandemic. And these are faces of hoarders, they're faces of delivery people, they're faces. I haven't done any real first responders yet because that's something I just haven't gotten my head wrapped around what that would look like. But I have made delivery people and hoarders and a few others. So here is a pizza box that has turned into the albino pizza delivery man who looks like he has nails driven into his head, but those are supposed to be hair going up. He's sort of angry, it looks like. Some of our pizza delivery people are angry by the time we get our fat asses down to the front door to get the food. Oftentimes, the person that's ordering the food forgets they ordered it. Drives me crazy. And sometimes they don't explain to the delivery person how our intercom system works, which is not the easiest thing in the world. So I often am in the lobby and their delivery person is wringing their hands and pounding on the door, and I will let them in and I'll ask where they're going, and they show me their receipt with the name of the person, and I walk them to the person's door and I pound on the door and they come to the door, and I said, did you order pizza? Oh yeah. Well, it's been, why aren't you answering the phone? Anyway, so here's the pizza delivery guy, angry. God damn you. Who else do I have? Here's a hoarder made of a Kleenex tissue box. And this was a Kleenex box that had hundreds of cases in them, or boxes. But what was funny, and not all of the people in my building are hoarders. That's not what I'm trying to say. I have lovely neighbors. But these days, when you go to a store and you try to find a roll of toilet paper, you don't have a choice of buying just 4 or even just 1. You have to buy a crate. So anyway, this particular thing had instructions on the box, and the instructions were twofold. One was facial tissue was written in many different languages, Russian and Greek and mouchoir, French and German. Geiststucker, Gesichtstucker. Gesicht is what's that, sick paper? Gesicht, or what is that? Sneeze, Gesicht, sneeze stuff, or gesnat gepicken, gesnat whatever, geschnatten. And then, so that was here, and I cut those up to make this come out of the mouth like that, like a cough, or out of the nose like a sneeze. And then it also had translated into the same language as this. And I intended for professional use, and I thought you have to be a professional to blow your nose these days. And the box had the name of the neighbor on it because it was shipped to them rather than picked up at a store. And I asked her, I said, I found your box of tissues, and I didn't understand what the professional use was. And these were little thin boxes that contained maybe 25 tissues or some lesser amount than a normal box of Kleenex. And these are things that she says you see in doctors' offices, and she teaches a class, so it's probably, she's a professional because she's dealing with groups of strangers or something in a office-like setting. So, but she said, I can't imagine why a doctor would want this. And I said, well, imagine it's if an exam room is somehow infected by a patient who has explosive diarrhea or who knows what all, rather than throwing out a perfectly hardly used big box of Kleenex, you might as well just throw out the thin little slim box. So anyway, this is meant to be a hoarder, but it could just be a contagious person instead of a hoarder. Let's see, who else do I have? Here's another hoarder. This is 10-inch paper towel roll. I don't remember what company this was from. I think this was from an industrial, again, for our building in the one public restroom, they have a dispenser on the wall that puts out paper toweling to dry your hands after you do your business, and I think that's what this was. So it's not exactly a hoarder in this case, because it's meant for a huge building. So anyway, so that's here. And a friend of mine wrote an article in a newspaper. No, not a newspaper. There's another pizza delivery person. Happier this time. I'll just show you some other things here. Here's another made from that same box. Here's another Kleenex box with droopy eyes and runny nose. More from the paper towel box. So these are all faces of the pandemic. Anyway, so this friend of mine, let me just show you two more Kleenexes. Here's a Kleenex, so you can see the E of Kleenex, and there's the K is a mustache kind of thing, and another Line, and more Kleenex faces. It's fun creating these little faces of these things. Anyway, back to this friend. Wrote an article in a technology review, MIT Technology Review. He's the editor, and he wrote an article that talked about how we're going to get over this thing, and one of the things to keep us safe, or to make us safe, is going to be the surveillance and tracking of people that are infected and those that aren't, and to figure out where the hot spots are by tracking. So in the trash was this box that had a little spy camera on it, and I turned that box into, this is meant to represent Big Brother, but it's also supposed to kind of be a cloud. It was a very small box, so I didn't have a lot to work with, and it was very subtly marked. I don't think it might have had a brand name somewhere, but it was really very minimally marked. But it had the picture of the object inside, and that's what you see here, the eyes of the camera, the all-seeing camera. And I kept that little hole in that the tab would go into as part of the design, sort of as if this is the input port or the export port for taking all the information it sees and putting it out there. Here's another port with its little skew teeth. So this is what's seeing us. So I'm showing you this just because I'm going to now show you not necessarily the climax, but the incentive for doing this, were my taking all sorts of Corona beer bottle boxes to make masks, or heads. I call them masks because of a show I did called The Mask Show. But these are more portraits. So here's a Corona face of Corona. Here's another one. So you can see, clearly where the capital C and the O come in. Here you just see the C is the mouth, part of the mouth, part of the ears or head or whatever that's supposed to be. Here you see it as the eyebrows or the forehead, I guess, and the eyebrows, or the hair and the eyebrows, and then the eyes. Then, the other parts of the box have the little made in Mexico. A lot of bad hombres down there. You see the seals here, the yellow eyes and the yellow mouth. I had fun with this sort of counter change, I think they're called, in heraldry, where you flip the colors around. So a lot of them have that. Here's another little face. So, and every time I find another Corona box, I get out my little scissors and cut them up to make more little faces. And I try to make them different, but quite often the O's become eyes and a mouth because that's just what they do. The R often becomes a nose. This one has a little bit of snot. Come on, let me pick your nose for you there. There you go. There. What's a mother to do with these children? So these are the Corona box masks. This is the one that's the weirdest, sort of, and I need to fix his tongue. I got more glue on it than I wanted to, but this is sort of the most, looks like a Chinese dragon or something. I prefer the smaller ones here. So it's really fun to, and then when they're all put together, my original idea was to have them, which way does this go? I guess it goes this way, so there's lots of teeth in that mouth. My original idea was to have them strewn about the gallery and little, just all over the place. But I ended up thinking that you won't really see the differences between the items, and I thought that was more important than seeing them all over the place, was how clever I was. No, I'm not trying to show that, but part of it, I guess. But the idea of how many solutions to, make a face out of a Corona box. Well, a lot of people would say, how could you do that? Well, I've given you dozens of ways to do that. So if I can do it dozens of times, you can do it once. Right? That's not a Corona box. Or is it? Maybe that is. It's funny. It probably is from this box. Same ink color. Just their SKU numbers or whatever they were. That's a happy little Corona. But the most important mask or face in the face of Corona disease and the pandemic, who would that be? Who is the most important person in this whole nightmare that we're dealing with in the United States of America? I'll give you one guess. You shouldn't even have to think about it. It should just come right to your little head. Is it a Democrat? No, it's just a hoax, folks. It's it's our president. So you see him here as a orange monstrosity with a big gaping pie hole in his little beady pink eyes. And the sort of light area around here that I used is meant to be his weird, I don't know, spray tan or whatever the hell he does to his head to make it look like it does. And this was an inspiration for this particular way I did this, was the Budweiser case had this very brushy crown on it, and it looks like the depictions of the coronavirus. So I imagine that their heads are rolling in the Budweiser, the Anheuser-Busch corporate offices as they're trying to figure out who designed that thing. The eyes and the brighter orange comes from some sort of grapefruit flavored alcoholic drink, maybe. So it has this sort of sweaty, dew that you see on the can to make it seem like it's fresh and invigorating. So here you see it as nasty sweat of our commander. And of course, his hair, his beautiful hair, you see the 7 strands of, and here's his eyebrows, you see the 7 strands of his hair that he trains to turn into his actual hairdo. So this is what's left on that side of his face. Here's what's left on the right side of his head, rather. And then the one strand that exists comes up here and goes around and around and around. This is all connected. It's meant to be connected. I think there's one extra one here that got put in there by mistake. Maybe he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 strands of hair on his head. So, and they're made out of skew numbers, which is all about capitalism. Anyway, so here's this, but this is going to go in the center of my little display, and out of his pie hole will be his misinformation and his ineptitude at taking the power that he does have to try to battle the virus, but he's not using it, and he's not using it correctly. He's using his bully pulpit to spread. This is coming out of his pie hole, is the spread of the corona. And so here's one corona, and what happens with geometric progression? It turns to 2 coronas. And what do the 2 coroni do? Is that the plural of corona? 2 coroni turn into 4 coroni, and they turn into 16 coroni, or 8 coroni, sorry, doing my math wrong. So they're doubling as they exit his pie hole. And so now I want to do at least 2 more rows of this coming out. And even these things are part of the corona box. And they're going to have really, really thin things coming out with even tinier faces. So I may have to do those up here on my desk. I have a pair of tweezers. They look like this, except they're not in my jar of now dried shellac that I use for fixing pen sacks. Well, it's here somewhere. I've got a little tiny tweezers, and I can't use my hot glue gun because that's too crude a thing. So I'll use regular glue, but I'll make little tiny ones. Itty bitty, tiny ones. Out of these, like half the size. Somehow using the smallest zeros and stuff. And we'll see if I can come up with at least 2 more rows. And then they're just going to sort of end with little colored dots as they get smaller and smaller. So what do you think? Mr. President.
It's great. No one spreads corona better than I do. No one's seen anything like it.
Here, I'm not doing a very good imitation of him anymore, but what do you think, people? Write your answers below. Write who you think is, in America, who has caused the spread of the disease more than anyone else. I don't think that there's any debate. Is there?